I don't think anyone should feel like they're forced to join a guild in the World of Warcraft. I think it's important to say that like right away because as much as I happen to be like pro guild, I'm also more pro freedom to choose your social approach to the game. Like it's one thing to be like, okay, I want to play at a high level. I'm tired of the pug world. I want to feel like I belong to something bigger, like an organization, and grow alongside comrades over time. Be a part of that collective victory. That's kind of a natural thought process. But to just complete a raid, even a mythic raid, or to get a very hard to get item or a piece of gear, that focus on your individual sense of accomplishment, that in itself should not require joining the guild. I don't want someone to join my guild out of some obligation or only because we have something that they want because, they consider that to be the value of the guild, and then when that's fulfilled, they leave. I don't really want that. Anyway, hey, it's Soul, and today we're going to talk about guilds. A while back, after interviewing a few devs from the WoW team, I talked about very specific features that I'd like to see for guilds to make them more desirable to be a part of, with mostly the focus on guild groups, with updating perks and benefits to make it really awesome for guild mates to just do things together. Even though that video was from a year ago, I strongly suggest giving that a listen or a watch because it gets pretty specific. And hey, who knows? Maybe the WoW team picked up on some of our ideas from back then, but more than likely not. Since we last talked at length about this, there has been one significant change. Guilds can be populated by members of the opposite faction. Now, the process is a little bit inelegant with the forced battle tag friending just to invite people, but cross-faction guilds altered the landscape. It enabled guilds to be more than just a coalition of faction members, but now it's more like the joining of the champions of Azeroth, as if guilds were like one of the many factions that we team up with today to take on the latest big bad. More practically though, it's just one less barrier to let friends play together with the freedom to choose their race or their faction without penalty. And we know that there's at least one guild update coming with the upcoming War Within expansion. When the pre-patch drops, players will be able to join guilds across realms, and by consequence, cross-realm mythic raiding will become a permanent fixture into the game. This is great news for mythic raiders, but greater news for just everybody, because now realms will no longer separate players and friends who want the benefits of a guild, with just regional separation being the only barrier left. So anyone in the Americas region, as an example, regardless of faction or server, can join my guild. I don't suggest it. I've seen what happens when too many new people join at once, but in other situations, like wanting to run mythic raids with friends or unite tons of like-minded players with the benefits of guild perks and a guild bank, that's going to be a normal thing with all of its ups and downs. But that's not enough. The team shouldn't consider their work done. In fact, they should be taking a much more aggressive approach to adding and improving the guild infrastructure. Otherwise, we're just setting ourselves up for a fail. I'm oversimplifying, but there are two big components to improving guilds. One being the benefits and incentives, what makes it cool to join a guild. The other being management and logistics, the tools that we need to run a guild. It doesn't work if we have one without the other, and at the moment, the guild game is lacking in both incentives and tools. But I have been getting a lot of support and assistance from the sponsor of today's video, Ridge. We've been partnered together for a while, and it's because I truly believe in the product. True story. I was sponsored by them, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this thing out for a little while to get paid and then go back to my old wallet. But I kid you not, it's still sitting on my desk while my original Ridge wallet has been taking a beating with no sign of it wearing out. Now I am sort of obligated to show you a sample of what's new and tell you that it's their 11-year anniversary and that you can save up to 30% by using the link ridge.com/soul. But I'm going to be honest, it's simply a great wallet. It works really easy. It barely takes up space in my pocket, and many of them have a cool little matching no jingly key case. You can try it for up to a year, and if you don't like it, I ain't gonna be offended. You could just send it back for a refund. Ridge.com/soul, give it a try. So I mentioned earlier that I put a lot of thought into another video where I talk about benefits, perks, and incentives that would make it cool to be part of a guild. I'm going to do a super quick version of that, but again, I encourage you to give that one a watch. It's important to carefully manage what these incentives mean. The very first thing I said in today's video was that no one should feel like they're forced to join a guild in World of Warcraft. It's kind of jank when someone is like, someone's like, okay, I want a certain pet or I want one of those heirlooms and I can only get them by being in a guild. It's weird motivation to join a guild just for that. And hey, you know what? Maybe the guild ends up being cool and you stay, but your primary motivation isn't the people or what the people do, it's just what they have. In any case, if the WoW team is going to add new incentives, they ought to first look at the principal incentive of a guild, which is its people working together, like-minded folks who play, who have like similar mindsets and schedules, so you can rely on them when it's time to play video games. That's a strength that the devs ought to enhance. That's why my suggested approach puts a lot of focus on guild groups when most of your party or raid is made up of guildmates. The guild group requirement ought to be a lot more relaxed. Like, right now we have 3 out of 5 party members, and if you have that, then it's a guild group. The guild raid group, that ought to be brought down from the current 80% down to 50%, and it'll enable some awesome guild abilities that the guild had worked together to unlock. So, how cool would it be if your dungeon or guild raid group activated a feature inside the instance to help you summon the rest of your group, and they can do repairs for a fraction of the cost? How about a Flightstone bonus? It kind of walks the line towards helping player gear faster in that case, but depending on the bonus, it can be just that, just a bonus, and not a must-have reason to join a guild. In outdoor content, it can be as few as 2 guildmates who are outdoors, who can they can make up a guild group, and then get bonuses to experience or gold or other rewards. The weekly guild objectives, they could use an overhaul too. I'd say jack up the gold amounts to something that helps to better counterbalance the daily and the weekly upkeep of repairs and consumables. Add guild outdoor activities, even guild crafting to the weekly objectives. After all, WoW is more than just raids and dungeons, right? And it'd be really neat to have special cosmetics that the guild works towards together. Maybe it's from funneling resources, maybe it's grinding activities together, but I'd like to see a bunch of different cosmetics and mounts and pets and ensembles that are only available when you're part of that guild. And then we slowly unlock them to make our guild stand out against other guilds who might have chose different cosmetics to unlock. The aim with features based on grouping is that by incentivizing people to play together, there's an opportunity to bond, and who knows, you just might meet your future ex-girlfriend or boyfriend or something. The incentives are the treat. It's the glue that helps to reinforce those bonds. But it's the logistics and infrastructure are what first brings guild members together. We're going to be in a WoW with very few social barriers, making it easier to join the guild that you want, but you gotta find them first. Right now, cross-faction invites are still a little bit messy, and I expect it to be cleaned up for the War Within. I'm just putting the spotlight on it again, sorry. Having to battle tag friend someone just to invite them to your, party or guild cross-faction, it's pretty janky. I can rationalize the explanations from the WoW team that, people might be confused and accidentally join the opposite faction and then, oh no! And that the primary focus of cross-realm and cross-faction guild invites is for people that you are already friends with and now you can play together. Okay, that covers a portion of the audience, but that just doesn't feel good enough. This is a feature that should also be sold and enabled as a way to give people so much more reach to meet new people and connect. If someone wants to apply to a guild, just have the game leave some clear messaging that, hey, this guild is on a different server, or that it's run by a horde or an alliance character, and then let the reader's eyeballs do the rest. At worst, we'd have a brief and uncomfortable conversation and a lesson learned, and then that's kind of it. So smooth out the invite process, let people apply to the guild that they want without the hoops to jump through, and then let them have their little anecdotes of how it got really awkward. Currently, guilds are capped at 1,000 players. No doubt there are multiple guilds or guild coalitions that are well beyond that cap, and I'm talking about not just the amount of characters, but amount of active players. With cross-realm and cross-faction guilds, there's a chance that we could have more than a handful of these new, very large organizations. Increasing the guild cap, then, it still might not be a high priority for the team, but something that I would like to see instead is for guilds to count its members not by character, but by account instead. So, Like for example, I have a lot of alts in my guild, but I can only log on to one character at a time, so why should I, as a player, count for like 5, 10, or 20 spots? I should just count for one. Now I do have a second WoW account, so it stands to reason that characters on that account, when they're added to the guild, that they would still just end up counting towards a second person, since I can be logged onto both at once. Another nice little touch that I'd appreciate would be if I click on a guildmate on the roster, I'd like to be able to see all of their other alts who are also, inside the guild. Maybe they should be able to hide that for personal reasons, like I don't know, but the aim is that if the guild counts the number of WoW accounts versus characters, that's probably going to free up a lot of space for more members. I'm jumping around the process here a little bit, but players also need more help just finding the guild that they want. And guilds need more help advertising to get the right people. As someone who's looking for a guild, the current finder just doesn't provide enough information. And it's going to be that much harder when this goes cross-realm. Right now, one can only see guilds from the same faction. That's going to have to change with an option to post both Horde and Alliance run guilds. We also don't know if the guild finder is going to search the entire region's worth of guilds, possibly for the same reason that it's not so easy to join guilds cross-faction. Whatever the case though, it's my strong opinion that players ought to be able to search for and find guilds without all these weird restrictions across the entire region from just the main UI. Now that said, seeing only 3 guilds at a time, that makes the search process feel mentally taxing even now. Now, imagine sifting through the entire region. So a revamped guild finder ought to include like a beefy list form of all the guilds that meet our criteria. Currently, guilds have to refresh their recruitment posting every 30 days to show up on this list, and maybe 30 days is a little bit too long. Maybe it should be like 20 or 10 days perhaps to underline a guild that is aggressively recruiting. We also need to ask ourselves, what sorts of metrics or filters do we want to use to curate our results a little bit more? I've heard lots of suggestions around forums and elsewhere, metrics like how many active guildmates were on in the past week, which may or may not be a bit too specific. The age of the guild might be a little bit helpful. The achievement score, it'll show how much time and work has gone into guild-based activities. The time zone could be important considering the cross-realm portion of it. What I think will help most though are additional tags that the guild sets up on their end that people can search for. In fact, one can use tags on the guild finder now, but the guild needs to have typed it correctly. Like, for example, one guild might type out the word hardcore in their description, while another will write out the letters HC because that's what they had to do to get it to fit in their description, while another will misspell it and separate the words hard and core. Making that into a more common clickable tag will help on both ends. And how about LGBTQ friendly guilds? Like maybe a general tag for inclusivity will help narrow down that particular search. The current guild finder uses tags of sorts, but they're really limited, with only one focus to choose from and nothing in terms of sub-options. Raiders could have more options to show their schedule, or at least the number of raid days, but even with all the tags in the world, ultimately it's going to end up being on the responsibility of guild leadership to create an effective welcome message to lure people in. And there's going to be a consequence to cross-realm, cross-faction guilds and this improved searching and posting capability. Large, established guilds are going to be, for the most part, fine. In fact, they'll likely get a lot more new members and visibility. New and upcoming guilds are going to really struggle to get off the ground because they probably won't fit in many people's filters and requirements. And if it's going to be easier to join a guild, naturally people are going to gravitate towards these larger guilds that suggests at least more stability and organization. It's not so different from server populations where big servers get bigger and small servers get smaller. On the flip side though, if it's easier to find and join a guild, it's easier to leave your guild for another one, which is not so different from now, but there might be this big revolving door effect going on for a while, and we'll have to be mindful of that. And finally, we'll get to the down and dirty stuff, some of the tools to help us manage the guild that could also use some major updates. Probably the most talked about improvement or fix is to actually undo the updates to guild permissions that came alongside WoW communities. In a nutshell, it became oversimplified. Once upon a time, these officer permissions were separated, allowing guild leadership to create more custom ranks for administration of the roster using things like officer chat for loot councils, or giving one person the job of posting a fun message of the day each day, but no other role because maybe we don't want that particular person to see what we have to say about their DPS to class officers or something like that. And maybe I only want certain officers to look at other officers' notes. Like, we need that sort of control back. I mean, sure, I could do a lot of this over a third-party app like Discord, but that's outside the context of me just trying to suggest things to improve World of Warcraft. Maybe wrangling all these individual guild permissions can get messy, but that's the point. I want to manage what guildmates can and can't do in a better way. Earlier, I mentioned being able to see a guildmate's alt, and I think that'd actually be a pretty cool permission to set as well. I think for privacy's sake, maybe it should be up to that individual person to decide if they want to display all of their alts in the guild. But for management's sake, I'd like to see all of the guildmates' alts at an officer level, in case I need to like clean house up a bad actor or something. And I should probably stop here. There's so much more that falls under a guild wish list, like guild halls and being able to join multiple guilds at once and so much more. So feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments. After all this talking though, I got to admit that I don't have expectations that any of these things will happen by the time War Within launches. It's taken a long time just to get WoW communities up with very few updates since its launch. I won't be surprised if the WoW team does just take a wait and see approach after cross-realm guilds because they just want to, focus on it working, but honestly, it's not good enough. There's plenty of actionable feedback that they can react that's years old, but for now, all we can do is cross our fingers. Hit the like button, subscribe for more coverage, catch me live on Twitch, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.